Part 31. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 301. In the small combat conference room of the Navy headquarters. At this time, the Warring States General, the instructor Sci-fi, Garp, Chief Staff Officer Ahe, Jun, Kuzan, Sakaski, and Porisalino were all here. There are also some elite lieutenant generals and major generals here. And what issues are they discussing now? The Wulaoxing side scolded me last time, saying that if our navy is incapable of taking care of the affairs of the New World, we should stop interfering in the plans of the King Shishibukai, the Warring States General said with a somewhat helpless expression. Are we going to let the King's Shishibukai plan go? Zifa frowned and said with some displeasure. Jun said directly, the fundamental problem in this matter is that our navy has lost control of the New World. If we want to completely solve the King's Shishibukai plan, we still have to take back control of the New World. Why is it so easy? Kuzan said softly. Garp ate the senbei, making a clicking sound, then looked at Sengoku and asked, so? Warring States, you suddenly called us together. You must have something to say, right? Commander Ahe took a sip of tea and asked softly. The Warring States General nodded, and then said the main reason why the 5 old stars are angry is that our navy cannot form effective control over the New World. Just like this time, Hosgorod Orgrim went to Wano country to meet Kaido. This is a very dangerous phenomenon, but unfortunately, our navy has nothing to do about it. The expressions of the others also fell silent. Yes, they have nothing to do. In the final analysis, this is still the incompetence of their navy. If the navy is powerful enough, the world government will not do anything to destroy the Shishibukai, right? Originally, I thought that the war between Orgrim and the Big Mom pirates might be an opportunity for our navy to re-enter the New World. But currently, it seems that both of them are deliberately controlling the situation of the war, so for now so far, we haven't had any good opportunities. On the contrary, this war not only did not make them weak, but actually made them stronger as they fought. Warring States spoke again. Yes, it can be seen that they are training troops. Garp swallowed the senbei in his mouth. The Warring States General nodded, and then continued, if you continue to let it go, the pirates in the New World will become stronger and stronger, especially Orgrim, the powerful pirate group headed by Kaido. Charlotte Lingling and Newgate will annex the entire New World sooner or later. This is a situation that our navy must try our best to avoid. After talking for so long, can we just get down to business? Does this question need to be repeated? Garp said suddenly impatiently. Sengoku looked at Garp with toothache, and then he stopped talking nonsense and said directly, I intend to break this phenomenon and prepare to bring the Warhammer pirates. If we can severely damage the Warhammer pirates or even kill Orgrim, the existing balance in the New World will be quickly broken, and we will no longer have to worry about whether Orgrim will ally with Kaido. Even our navy can take this opportunity to re-enter the New World. This time, as soon as Warring States finished speaking, all the other eyes were focused on him, and they seemed to be looking forward to it. Tell me. Zifa said in a deep voice. Warring States smiled, then took out a photo of Orgrim and said, this guy is very cunning. He can pick it up and put it down. It can be said that he is the best one. Every time Xiao Boda did not compete with the real power of our navy, so we failed to take him down many times. Can the navy defeat Orgrim? Can it defeat the Warhammer pirates? It can definitely be beaten, but unfortunately, every time it fights Orgrim, the navy's true power cannot be maximized, so that every time it allows this guy to run away, and is also beaten by him. Extremely embarrassed. Ever since Marijoa came back from being scolded, the Warring States General had been thinking about a way to solve this situation. After thinking about it, he discovered a blind spot, that is, every time Orgrim seizes the opportunity to attack their navy, and their navy, for various reasons, seems to be a little unwilling to make progress, as if it is being controlled by Orgrim. Reem was scared, as if he was afraid that he would cause some big incident. Therefore, the navy used to, as long as Orgrim did not make any moves and was quiet, they would not provoke him to avoid causing any trouble. But the Warring States General now believes that this approach is wrong. We should find some opportunities to give Orgrim a hard blow. According to my summary, the problem I found is that we have never been able to have a real head-on battle with Orgrim. Whenever there is such an opportunity, he will choose to escape, so I think that if we want to hit him hard, we must first create an environment where he can't escape, the Warring States General said in a deep voice. This is very difficult. Do you mean that our navy can pick a place and invite Orgrim to come and fight to the death? Do you think he will agree? Garp smiled and said. Under normal circumstances, he would definitely not agree, the Warring States General said softly. Then, without waiting for the others to speak, the Warring States General continued, but what if we seize some of his vital points and force him to come and fight me head on? What's the meaning? Jun asked curiously. Under the curious gazes of the others, the Warring States General took out a photo, and it was none other than Eniro. Maybe you are not very familiar with this person, the Warring States General spoke softly. Enilo, Jun quickly called out his name. The new cotters of the Warhammer pirates are active in the current war in the New World. Zan also smiled and said. Although the current strength of the Thunderfruit user is not very good, as he grows, with the protection of Orgrim and others, his future achievements cannot be underestimated, Sakaski also said in a deep voice. Warring States was a little confused when he heard what everyone said to each other. I thought you didn't know this new guy. Do you all know it after a long time of quarrel? It seems that you do. You often pay attention to the Warhammer pirates? In fact, Sakaski, Kuzan, Jun, Porisalino and others have all suffered losses at the hands of Orgrim. On weekdays, they are naturally against the Warhammer pirates. The thieves are paying more attention. Ahem, Warring States cleared his throat, and then continued, since everyone knows about him, I won't introduce him from the beginning. Now let's talk about some important information. After a slight pause, Warring States said in a deep voice, Enilu, Thunder Fruit ability user, these are superficial information, but on a deeper level, according to our investigation, he is most likely a direct disciple of Khazgaro's Orgrim. He brought this guy down from the Sky Island many years ago. There were rumors that the Warhammer pirates obtained the Thunder Fruit on Sky Island. We all scoffed at this news at first. After all, if we really got such a powerful ability, there is no reason not to use it quickly to strengthen the Warhammer pirates themselves. But for a long time, the Warhammer pirates have not appeared. Thunder Fruit ability user, until recently. Speaking of this, the Warring States General glanced at everyone, and then continued, not long ago, this Enel appeared in the New World as a user with the ability of the Thunder Fruit. We can infer that a long time ago, Orgrim obtained the Thunder Fruit on Sky Island and found the little guy Enel. Then, he took a fancy to Enel's talent or other factors. In short, he appreciates and values Enel very much. For this reason, he has even been able to hold the Thunder Fruit in his hands for so many years just to wait for Enelu to become a talent. The Warring States General said a lot, which all revolved around two themes. First, Enel is a new cotter of the Warhammer pirates, and is most likely a direct disciple of Orgrim. Secondly, Orgrim valued and trained him beyond imagination, and even kept the Thunder Fruit in his hands for many years without considering other candidates. From this point of view, Enel is indeed very important to the Warhammer pirates, Garp murmured softly. Orgrim really valued him, otherwise the so-called invincible natural Thunder Fruit would be given to him, Zifa said in a deep voice. On the contrary, the eyes of Chief Ahe's staff lit up and he said, so, you want to take advantage of the Warhammer pirates and Orgrim's attention to Enel to lay out a plan. The Warring States General grinned and said, yes, that's what I meant. Orgrim has never fought against the real power of our navy. Every time he encounters such a situation, he will choose to retreat, but if we let, is there no way he can retreat? Capture Enel? Use Enel as bait to force the Warhammer pirates to fight head-on with our naval headquarters? Jun asked with a very quick response. Sengoku glanced at Jun with satisfaction, and then said, yes, this is the core of my plan. Compared with the other cotters of the Warhammer pirates, Eniru is the easiest to break through, because he is young and inexperienced, and the new world is currently in chaos with war, which is also a good opportunity. Although he is a new cotter, in fact, Enel has a very important position in the Warhammer pirates. They will not give up Enel easily. All these factors are beneficial to us. It's a good thing that Orgrim is not here, otherwise he would definitely be shocked, because isn't the Navy's plan the same one that will be used to deal with Whitebeard and start a war on top in the future? It can even be said that this core idea, almost exactly the same. It's just that this time the Navy's target is Enel instead of Ace. What if Orgrim gave up on Enel? I think he also has this kind of courage. Zifa thought for a while and said, it doesn't matter, we at least eliminated an important future combat force of the Warhammer pirates, and dampened their arrogance. If Orgrim gives up Enel, we can also seize the opportunity to use his discrediting his reputation as someone who values love and righteousness will also reduce the recognition of him by ordinary pirates. In short, there is no loss at all, the only difference is between a big profit and a small profit, the Warring States General said with a smile. In his opinion, this plan is indeed perfect. As long as Enel can be captured, with proper arrangements, the Warhammer pirates can be forced to engage in a decisive battle with their naval headquarters. At that time, with the superior strength of the Navy and the powerful combat power of the Navy, it may be possible to directly overthrow the Warhammer pirates in one fell swoop and completely eradicate this scourge. In this way, the Navy can take advantage of the power of victory and march into the new world in one fell swoop. It's not impossible. Moreover, this can be regarded as a brand new method to try to deal with these big pirates. If it is really effective, then it can be copied and used as a tactical routine to deal with the rest of the people. Such as Whitebeard. Don't you have many sons? After we finish taking care of Orgrim, we will capture a few of your sons from the sea and force you to fight us head on. The more I think about Warring States, the happier I get. However, he didn't understand, could Orgrim and Whitebeard be the same? Would you really be stupid enough to fight him head on? So, where is Enelu now? We need to make arrangements for his whereabouts, Consultant Ahe asked softly. Stolobelli has been asked to investigate, and the results should be available soon. This operation to capture Enel must be steady and ruthless, and must be secretive so that the Warhammer pirates cannot discover anything, so it is stuck. General, I hope you can do it yourself. The Warring States General looked at Garp and said in a deep voice. Garp stuffed the senbei in his hand into his mouth, bit it into pieces, and said with a serious look, no problem. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 302. Holy Land Marijoa, inside the headquarters building of the World Government. In Wulaoxing's office, Wulaoxing, Marshal Cyborg and the Warring States General were discussing something. After the Warring States General came up with a plan from the Navy, he went directly to the 5 Old Stars with Marshal Cyborg. After all, such a matter involves a lot and is enough to affect the situation of the world. It is impossible for the Navy to bypass the world government and act on its own. No matter what, I have to get approval from Wulaoxing. The 5 Old Stars looked at the plan of the Warring States period, frowning, and repeatedly thought about its feasibility. After a long time, the bald king among the 5 Old Stars looked at Warring States and said, Warring States, are you sure this plan is feasible? Warring States shook his head directly and said, I'm not sure. This is just a prototype of the plan. With Ani. The road is the core to guide the Warhammer pirates to fight against us, but how to operate it has not yet been decided. Seize Enelu and force Orgrim to fight the Navy head-on. Do you think that with Orgrim's character, he would really fight us for Enelu? the bearded 5 old stars murmured softly. Marshal Cyborg also smiled helplessly and said, I also think there are some flaws in this plan, and the feasibility cannot be determined. I also said something about the Warring States period, but he insists on trying. What is the only difference between making a lot of money and making a small amount of money? It's not just a question of whether he will save Enel, but also what method he will use to save Enel. Warring States, you and Orgrim are old rivals. You should understand, that guy, although he is strong, he is very thick-skinned, and he is unscrupulous in doing things. He is good at using small things to make big things happen. Let me ask you something. The bald king looked at the Warring States general and said in a deep voice. The Warring States general responded with a serious expression, excuse me. What if Orgrim chooses not to engage in a head-on battle with your navy, but uses the same threat to demand our release? The bald king's eyes flashed. Hearing this inquiry, Warring States was stunned for a moment. He also fell into a misunderstanding. He used the Navy's thoughts to figure out the pirates' thoughts, and came up with a slap on the head the plan made. That is because the world government has been very dissatisfied with the Navy recently, and the situation in the New World is a bit tense, which has caused Sengoku's mentality to be unstable. After all, he has not yet walked on the road of martial. At this time, there are some he was impatient. To be precise, because he couldn't wait to change the Navy's disadvantages, he instinctively ignored some factors that he could have seen. The big bosses of the Navy were used to the high IQ of the Warring States period, although they felt that there may be flaws in it, but the plan is not perfect yet. Sengoku may have a draft in mind that can make up for these flaws, so they didn't ask any more questions. But the 5 old stars are different. They sit on the entire world government and are far more cunning than Sengoku. If you are not involved in this navy, if you jump out and take a look, you will find the biggest problem with this plan. That is that your navy cannot guarantee that Orgrim will follow your ideas and save AI in a head-on confrontation. Nero. This, threaten, Warring States didn't know what to say for a while. He is not a fool. He was in the game before and couldn't figure out some things for a while. Now that Wu Lao Xing is a little bit older, he knows where there is a problem. Yes, let me give you another analogy. If Orgrim jumped over the wall, caused a massacre at sea, massacred our affiliated countries, demanded the release of Eniru, and massacred a city without releasing it for a day, what would you do? Response: the bald king raised his eyebrows and looked at Warring States. Warring States' expression was a little gloomy, as if he was thinking about countermeasures. Let me ask you again, if he tries to capture a certain celestial dragon to threaten your navy headquarters, will you let Enel go? How do you respond? The bald king asked again. The Warring States general hesitated again. Of course he felt that Enel should not be let go, but could he say this? The highest legal and rational representatives of the world government are the celestial dragons. If that guy Orgrim really captures a celestial dragon and threatens the navy headquarters to release them, Sengoku will not be able to withstand this pressure. The navy headquarters can't hold it, even if they don't want to let it go. Looking at Sengoku's frustrated expression, the bald king sighed, and then said, Sengoku, your plan is not impossible, but the target is wrong. If this plan is placed on the Whitebeard pirates, they may choose to confront your navy head-on, but I have discovered what Orgrim said, haven't you discovered it yet? He will only be upright when he accepts the challenge of the pirate camp. For example, when he joined Shiji's banner, for example, more than a year ago, he fought with Douglas Barrett in O'Hara against the demon-slaying order. But for our world government and your navy, he has always used all possible means and no taboos. He can use any despicable method. It can be used. That's right, Warring States, your plan is not very feasible when it comes to Orgrim. The best result is that both of us are defeated, we kill Eniru, and he sets off a series of revenge. The bearded 5 old stars nodded and spoke. Warring States couldn't help but think about it at this time. It was indeed true. He was a little impatient and couldn't wait to reverse the Navy's disadvantage, so much so that I didn't even understand such a simple question. We also know that the last time we said that your Navy was too harsh, but that is also because we have high expectations for your Navy. We do not have to embarrass you. We can also understand that Senguo wants to change the situation and reverse the situation. The Navy has an urgent impression in our hearts, but Warring States, you will be the one who will move to the position of Marshal in the future, and you are now an Admiral of the Navy. Before doing anything, you must first put your mind in the right place and be stable, the Bald King comforted the Warring States general. Although there was a big flaw in this plan, they could still see Warring States' intentions, so they wouldn't lose their temper because of it, and they could even feel a little relieved. And they themselves I intend to train Senguo to become a future naval marshal. Now I see that he has made a mistake, so of course I have to give him some advice. Yes, Sengoku, last time I asked your navy to stop interfering in the affairs of King Shichibukai, it didn't mean that I wanted your navy to do anything. The main thing is that we found that your navy's concept has not changed until now. And there is a big misunderstanding about us. Let me ask you, why on earth did our world government establish the King's Shichibukai? The bearded five old stars said. To exert influence over the new world, make up for the shortcomings of our navy in this regard, the Warring States general responded softly, with a somewhat ashamed tone. That's roughly true. But Sengoku, you have to understand that it's not just your navy that knows that there are no good things in the Shichibu Sea. In the future, even if it is fully formed, they will all be pirates who cannot be completely relied on. Our world government will naturally feel this way. I also understand that under such circumstances, you should think about it carefully, which one is more important to our world government, the Shichibukai and your naval headquarters, the Bald King said to Warring States in a deep voice. Warring States was silent for a while, and then said softly, the Navy is more important. That's right, for the past 800 years, our world government has been relying on your Navy. How could we put all our hopes on a pirate organization that has never been implemented just because of a failure in the New World? The reason why we want your Navy to participate in King Shichibukai's plan is to let your Navy understand that King Shichibukai organization is an organization at the same level as yours on the surface, but in fact, we want you to make good use of it. But you always seem to be misunderstanding something, and you are desperately trying to delay the construction of the King's Shichibukai, the Bald King explained to Warring States earnestly. Of course, how much truth or lies there is depends on different people's opinions. On the surface, Warring States looked very ashamed, but he couldn't believe it all. What if the Navy lets go and the Shichibukai suddenly becomes stronger, and you five old stars turn your back and disown each other? How will I explain to my colleagues in the Navy during the Warring States period? Warring States is still wary of these guys who play politics. If anyone really trusts them completely, they will probably lose their pants in the future. The five old stars also took this opportunity to criticize Warring States. Anyway, there is no charge for saying a few words. If Warring States listened, it would be good for them. As for who is more important to the world government, the Navy or the Shichibukai, it is true that the Navy is more important, but this matter must always be based on interests. The deeper aspect is that for the world government, the Navy is easier to bully than the pirates in the Shichibukai. After all, if the pirates are unhappy, they can stop working in the Shichibukai, but if the Navy is unhappy, they can only hold it in. In this way, when it comes to dealing with the Shichibukai and the Navy, as long as the short-term interests are huge enough to affect the world government's decision-making, do they have to think about who they will wrong first? But just when the Bald King was brainwashing Warring States, the fog in Warring States' mind seemed to be broken by lightning, and the original misunderstandings in his thinking were instantly filled up. No matter what the Navy thinks of Oshikibukai, what the five old stars just said is right. There are times when the Navy must make good use of Oshikibukai. At this moment, Sengoku suddenly had a deeper understanding of the King's Shishibukai organization. He suddenly discovered that the King's Shishibukai was not only used as a trashcan for the world government, but also used for dirty work. The Navy can also use them to do things that the Navy could not do originally. For example, this time against Orgrim. If the Navy comes forward to seize Enel, and then forces Orgrim to fight head-on, then Orgrim is indeed very likely to bypass this link and directly shamelessly attack the affiliated countries, or kidnap the Dracos or something. Use this to threaten the Navy to release them. But if the Navy doesn't come forward, what if the pirate organization Oshikibukai comes to the rescue? I heard that Moonlight Moria had some issues with Orgrim. Thinking based on this premise, assuming that the intelligence work is done well, Orgrim is briefly blinded for a period of time, creating a moonlight. Moria has completed his rest, returned to the New World, and is ready to operate on Orgrim. In order to settle the past grudges between the two, Moria directly captured Enelu and planned to kill Enelu to vent his anger. How would Orgrim react? Under such circumstances, he can't just come and ask the world government to make the decision, right? Let's talk about the identity of King Mariana's Shishibukai. After all, even if King Shishibukai is involved, this is still an internal matter among the pirates. If Orgrim wants to ask the world government to call the shots, such as threatening the world government and asking Moria to release people, it will only cause trouble. The Warhammer pirates were humiliated, making him unable to hold his head high in the pirate camp. And the world government has every reason and method to avoid being threatened by Orgrim. The most direct way is to remove Moria from the 7 seas of war. It's useless for you, Orgrim, to threaten us again. Moria is no longer under our control. We asked him to release him, but he immediately left the King's Shishibukai organization. There's nothing we can do about it. It's such a simple matter to speak in an official tone. If Moria handles things well, it wouldn't be a bad idea to invite him to rejoin in the future. No one stipulates that King Shishibukai cannot hold the position again. In this way, if the King's Shishibukai is used as the starting point and the pirate camp is used as an opportunity to capture Enel, Orgrim's first reaction will definitely be to find Moria and blow him up. The dog head. And behind this, if the Navy operates well and designs some perfect traps and plans, the possibility of a head-on war with the Warhammer pirates is also extremely high. Isn't this all done? For a moment, Sengoku felt that the clouds had cleared. The Shishibukai under the king was still very useful. It was not feasible at all to do this as a navy, but if it was done as a pirate, it would improve instantly. It has reached several levels. Thinking of this, warring states didn't care about anything else and directly interrupted the bald king's rambling words. Your Majesty Shishibukai. That's right, using the king's Shishibukai as the excuse. Wouldn't this plan work? Warring states said excitedly. The bald king was interrupted by warring states. He was a little angry at first. You guy, the leader is talking to you, how dare you interrupt? But after hearing what warring states said, he was also stunned for a moment. Huh. It seems like something has happened. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 303. In the New World, on the edge of the waters of Wano, on an ordinary pirate ship, Orgrim was helplessly persuading something. Seriously, don't send me away. If I send you away again, I will send you to Avalon. Go back and rest quickly. Boss Kaido, you have a lot of things to do, and you are the king of Ming. The country of Wano cannot do without you. Your people need you. Orgrim looked at Kaido's enthusiastic figure and said helplessly. He didn't stay in the country of Wano for too long. He came over and established a relationship with Kaido. The two sides signed some treaties of friendship and cooperation, and then having concluded a business deal on artificial devil fruits, even if this trip has been successfully completed. Orgrim does not intend to hang around Kaido's territory any longer. After all, the longer he stays here, the situation outside will become worse. The more likely it is that changes will happen. Besides, he is a big boss and always lives in Kaido's house. What do you mean? But when he said he wanted to leave, Kaido couldn't sit still and tried to dissuade him many times. But it was of no use. In the end, he could only bid farewell to Orgrim with tears, but he had to send Orgrim away life and death. Seeing his sincerity, Orgrim finally relented and agreed. The result was good. This sent him away for a whole week. Kaido just sent him to the edge of the Wano Sea area, and he didn't even have the intention to go back. Orgrim finally couldn't stand it anymore and began to persuade Kaido to go home quickly. If you keep sending him away, if I don't say anything, you will go back to Avalon with me. You are so enthusiastic, I really can't stand it. Dear brother, are you really not going back to sit down? I still have a lot to say to you. Kaido looked at Orgrim very reluctantly and said. I won't reply, we are all very busy, so next time we will do it next time, okay? When I have time, I will definitely come to Wano country to visit you, boss Kaido. I will definitely stay longer then. Orgrim quickly waved his hands and said. He said definitely. Although he said so, Orgrim had already made up his mind. Hell, if nothing happens in the future, he will never talk to Kaido again. This guy has met. Orgrim really can't stand him like this. Even if the two of them fight, it will be more enjoyable than this. Looking at Kaido's huge dragon body, hovering in the air, one step at a time after flying farther and farther back 3 times, Orgrim finally breathed a sigh of relief. Damn it, Kaido, this guy must have some kind of mental illness, right? Let Nightingale pay a friendly visit as a special envoy another day and let him give Kaido a good medical treatment. Orgrim smacked his lips and said. Fufu, although I expected Kaido to be very enthusiastic early on, I never expected that. Doflamingo also smiled and shook his head. The two chatted casually for a while, and Orgrim asked, what are you going to do now? Do you want to go back to Avalon with me? Doflamingo shook his head and said with a smile, I'm very talented. As for the enterprising man, now that you and Kaido have reached an agreement, Master Hammer, I have to get it done as soon as possible. I won't go to Avalon. I'll go to Melview. Caesar operates in both Avalon and Melview, but the main scientific research base is still arranged in Melview because the environment in Avalon is not very good. When it comes to scientific research, of course it is better to be quieter and quieter. Avalon is extremely chaotic and it is still dark all the time. Even if you want to grow an artificial devil fruit, the environment is not suitable. How can you grow it without the sun? So the isolated Melview is more suitable. You are really diligent enough. Orgrim smiled and said. Phew, it can't compare to your Mr. Chui's family's big business. My small family and small business can't be more caring, Doflamingo joked with a smile. Isn't that easy to handle? You join our Warhammer pirates directly, and I will give you a position as a high-ranking cotter. Wouldn't we have a great career together and be close to each other? Orgrim laughed and patted Doflamingo on the shoulder. Doflamingo smiled and didn't answer. Orgrim was wise enough not to mention this matter again, casually. After chatting for a while, Doflamingo began to use the phone to call people to ask his subordinates to pick him up. Orgrim turned and walked into the cabin to find Stussy. At the same time, in the cabin, Stussy's face was also very bad, a little pale, and a little distracted. She was holding a tiny phone bug in her hand, which looked as big as a fingernail. Nothing. Doubt, this should be the special contact number of their CP agency. and Stussy, obviously received some order. Seemingly hearing Orgrim's footsteps, Stussy suddenly pulled the extremely small. The phone bug was crushed to death and thrown into the sea from the window. It seems that this thing should be disposable. Orgrim reached out and knocked on the door. After hearing Stussy's response, he walked in. Then, Orgrim looked at Stussy with a strange expression and said, "Why does your face look so bad? What happened?" Stussy pretended to be calm when she heard this, and smiled reluctantly and said, "It's just a little uncomfortable. You know, we girls will have that period of time every month." When Orgrim heard this, a hint of surprise appeared on his expression. Oh, it turned out that relatives were here. Although Orgrim and Stussy did not establish any relationship, aside from these things, Orgrim was still very good to Stussy and he was very considerate. After learning that Stussy was on her menstrual period, Orgrim picked up a kettle from the table nearby with a smile, touched the lid, and said, "You can't drink cold water at this time." As he spoke, Orgrim picked up the doom hammer placed by the wall. The hammerhead gently leaned against the kettle, and then the hot breath spread out. After a while, the tea that was already cold became warm again. Orgrim picked up the kettle, took out a cup, and poured a cup of hot water for Stussy. He walked to Stussy very considerately and said with a smile, "Come on, drink more hot water." Stussy thought in her heart. She was slightly moved and took the hot water from Orgrim's hand. She was not fooling Orgrim. It was indeed her menstrual period today. Putting the water glass against her red lips, Stussy slowly swallowed 2 mouthfuls of hot water. The hot water entered her stomach. Although she didn't feel any discomfort at first, she felt more at ease now. Warm. Her originally pale face gradually recovered, and she looked at Orgrim's side face blankly. This cup of hot water seemed to be an opportunity for Stussy to start recalling this time. Ever since she stayed in Orgrim's room that day, the relationship between Orgrim and her had grown by leaps and bounds. Although she could also feel that Orgrim was still interested in her in the core area of the Warhammer Pirates. 11 has some precautions. But in other matters big and small, she almost never wronged Stussy. It can even be said that Orgrim is obviously a pirate, but he is a good man that is rare in this era. He is a great hero on the sea, but he can also pour himself a glass of hot water gently and considerately during his menstrual period. The joke about drinking more hot water had already become a symbol of straight men in Orgrim's previous life, and was played to pieces. But in this world, it is very precious, because few men can achieve this step. As for Stussy, she grew up in a cold environment. She didn't trust anyone, even now. Although she was very moved, she still didn't trust Orgrim. She believed that if she confessed her identity to Orgrim, she would definitely die tragically. But at this moment, Stussy looked at Orgrim's heroic profile and suddenly discovered one thing, that is, he seemed to, unknowingly, I had some feelings for this damn guy that I shouldn't have. She had not noticed this in the past, but just now, she received an order and a task from her superiors. On the world government side, a conspiracy against Orgrim and the Warhammer Pirates has been launched. And her task as Stussy was to subtly guide Orgrim into the trap in this plan. Stussy knew very well that if Orgrim really fell into this trap, neither the Warhammer Pirates nor he would be saved. Even if you have a little better luck and can survive, your vitality will be severely damaged, and everything Orgrim has devoted his efforts to build in the new world will be destroyed in one day. Precisely because she understood the possibility behind this, after receiving this order and task, she found herself so resistant to this kind of thing. In the past, Stussy could sell the information that had nothing to do with Orgrim's true interests to the world government without saying a word, in order to get promoted and make a fortune. But now, she seems unwilling to do so. Because of this, she realized that she had some inappropriate thoughts and fantasies about Orgrim. Soon, Stussy recovered from her daze. She found Orgrim touching his chin, as if he was thinking about something. What are you thinking about? Stussy smiled softly and asked. Orgrim glanced at Stussy, and then said, I'm thinking of home remedies. In my impression, my mother often got sick because of these things when she was a child. It hurts. She will eat whatever she wants at this time, all in all it's very effective. But after thinking about it carefully, Orgrim didn't think of it. In his previous life, it was said that there was a way to drink brown sugar water. Thinking of this, Orgrim said with a smile on his lips, by the way, brown sugar water is very good. It's useful. I'll ask someone to get some for you later. Don't sit still. That guy Kaido has left. Dover will leave soon. There are no outsiders anymore. You don't have to be so reserved. You've been here for the past few days. Just lie in bed and have a good rest. Stussy listened to Orgrim's words with a gentle smile on her lips. She rarely experienced caring, which she cherished very much. I see, Stussy smiled and responded. Then, she took off her shoes, put on her pajamas in front of Orgrim, and then curled up on the bed, looking at Orgrim with a smile. What laughing? Orgrim asked a little strangely. Nothing, just thought of something interesting. Stussy winked at Orgrim mischievously. Orgrim casually covered her bed to prevent air leakage, and then poured himself a cup of tea and drank it. I have nothing to do, and I vaguely know that at this time, I should spend more time with Stussy. Although I don't plan to establish any relationship with Stussy, it's not a bad thing to pay more attention to her, maybe in the future. How many postures can be unlocked? Stussy did not expect that Orgrim was so dirty in his heart. Seeing Orgrim cover the bed carefully, her heart became warmer. She looked at Orgrim's calm drink with a tea gesture. After a long time, he called softly, Master Chui. What's wrong? Orgrim was holding the tea and turned to look at Stussy and asked. Stussy wanted to say something, but after seeing Orgrim's eyes, she suppressed all those words. What if? Orgrim asked a little strangely. Stussy shook his head and said, nothing. When can we return to Avalon? It's been so long since I've been out, I miss it a little bit. Orgrim didn't wonder what Stussy meant by half of what he said. After all, it's normal for them to be fragile and emotional at times like this. Gee ha 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 ha, don't worry, you will be back in Avalon soon. Orgrim laughed. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 304. The Island of Eternal Night, Avalon. After some sailing, Orgrim returned here 2 days ago. In his room, Orgrim was sitting on the sofa, reading a lot of information that Gangplank had just sent. Although Orgrim almost ignored Avalon, he still had to grasp the general direction. If you want to grasp the general direction, you must always pay attention to what is happening on the sea. So he occasionally asked Plank to compile the intelligence from this period, and then read it one by one himself. While Orgrim was looking at the information in his hand, he glanced at the person holding a rag in the room, wiping the dust on the bookshelf, and returning some small things that Orgrim had thrown away casually. Queen Stussy. Recently, Orgrim always felt that something was wrong with the woman Stussy. Originally, when he returned to Avalon, Orgrim thought that there would be many things that needed her to deal with since Happy Street had not been taken care of by her for such a long time, and she would be very busy. The result was good. Stussy did not return to Happy Street at all, but lived with Orgrim. In the past, Britannia and the maids would arrange these things to clean up the house, and there was no need for Orgrim and the others to worry about it. But yesterday Stussy persuaded all the maids to go back and insisted on doing these things by herself. This made Orgrim very strange, especially when he found that wherever he went, Stussy would follow him. And from time to time, he would be in a daze and keep staring at himself, as if he had something on his mind. This kind of thing seems to have happened frequently since leaving Wano country. Occasionally, Orgrim could feel that Stussy wanted to say something to him, but when the critical moment came, he changed the subject and casually confused him. This woman, could it be that you are planning some conspiracy against me, Orgrim thought secretly in his heart. But after his observation, it seemed that Stussy didn't make any moves, let alone like before, he would insinuate himself from time to time, trying to get some interesting information from his mouth. While Orgrim was thinking about these things, Stussy tidied the bookshelf and glanced at Orgrim, who was reading the information. She did not look for opportunities to come over and take a look together like before. Or something. But with a gentle smile on his face, he picked up the teapot from the table on the side and brewed a cup of hot tea for Orgrim. "Master Chui, have some tea." Stussy put the teacup to Orgrim's mouth and said softly. Orgrim instinctively opened his mouth and drank the tea. Then he looked at Stussy in surprise and asked, "Is there anything you need to do in Happy Street?" "Maybe." Stussy refilled the teacup and said without looking back. "Don't you plan to go back and take a look?" Orgrim asked again. Stussy paused for a moment while pouring tea, then chuckled and said, "No plan, I don't want to go back for the time being." After finishing speaking, Stussy turned to look at Orgrim again, his mouth tightened, and he asked with a somewhat aggrieved and resentful expression, "What, Lord Hammer, are you annoyed with me? Want to drive me away?" Orgrim quickly waved his hand and said, "No, no, it's just a little strange that you seem to be a little bit weird these days." "Not quite right." Stussy's expression was a little dazed, and then she asked, "What's wrong?" "No. How to say, too enthusiastic." Orgrim touched his chin again and said. It was also at night. After Stussy's menstrual period passed, she pressed Orgrim on the bed and whipped her hard almost every night, looking like she was not satisfied with her desires. Appearance. "Mr. Hammer," Stussy suddenly called softly, and then continued without waiting for Orgrim to speak, "If I am no longer the Queen of Happy Street, I can serve you here with peace of mind and live with you. Will you dislike me? Aren't you going to be the Queen of Happy Street? Live peacefully with me?" Orgrim was a little confused, and soon thought of something. Could it be that Stussy had received some mission that required her to be a queen beside me? A 24-hour spy, right? Thinking about it again, the world government must know about my meeting with Kaido. They may be afraid that Kaido and I will do something suddenly, so someone needs to keep an eye on me and report the situation in time. That's why he arranged for Stussy to do this. All of a sudden, Orgrim seemed to be able to understand all the strange behaviors Stussy had done before. Did he want to hold back a big move for me? There is something wrong with this woman. "Stussy, why is that?" "In my opinion, you are in charge of Happy Street and will be more helpful to me," Orgrim said softly. Stussy's eyes dimmed a little, she forced a smile, and said, "Master Hammer, do you just see me as a woman who can help you and be useful?" Orgrim looked at it. Looking at Stussy's pitiful look, she frowned slightly and was silent for a moment. She felt that it was not good to force this matter. She should guide Stussy in a subtle way, so as not to be noticed by this cunning woman. "Not really," Orgrim shook his head, and then said, "I think you may be tired. For a while, I didn't want to care about anything. I just wanted to find a deserted island with no people and live there quietly for a while. Don't let anyone disturb me. I think this is the situation for you now. In this case, just do what you want to do. When you are almost rested, I think you will still change your mind." Stussy then laughed and said, "Maybe I will never go back for the rest of my life." "Gee, ha 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 ha, that's okay. With a beauty like you, it doesn't matter if I raise you for the rest of my life." Orgrim laughed loudly and said, "Are you just coveting my beauty?" Stussy muttered dissatisfiedly, and then before Orgrim could speak, Stussy asked again, "Do you want anything to eat for lunch?" Orgrim raised his eyebrows, and then said, "It seems that there is nothing in particular that I want to eat, So just ask Brittany and the others to arrange whatever they want. Since Mr. Chewy, you have nothing special to eat, why not let me cook it myself and give you a taste of my cooking? Stussy suddenly looked at Orgrim with interest and said. Orgrim was even more surprised. What was this woman doing? This feeling, why does it feel inexplicably familiar? But when Stussy said this, Orgrim also became interested. The Queen of Happy Street cooked the food herself. This was not a common thing. Ha 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 ha, okay, then I'm looking forward to it, Stussy. Orgrim said with a smile. Humph, I've been secretly reading and learning recently. Just wait for my skills. Stussy said with some arrogance. Then she hummed, put the tea in Orgrim's hand, and walked out of the room happily. Orgrim reached out and took out his ears, and then put some tea in his mouth. He blew gently to blow off the dirt on his little finger, and then smacked his lips in a strange way a woman has a deep heart, let alone a powerful spine. I really don't know what she is up to. Inexplicable. Said Orgrim looked down at the information in his hand again. He was sitting here carelessly reading the information today just because he wanted to seduce Stussy. But the result was good. This woman didn't care about these things at all. It was completely inconsistent with her usual behavior. After thinking for a long time and not understanding Stussy's behavior, Orgrim shook his head, opened the information, and read the next item. Then, Orgrim's expression was slightly surprised, because he saw a familiar face in the photo. Tyrant Bartholomew Bear enters the new world, Orgrim whispered softly. To say that in the original story, there were a few of the Shichibukai who were particularly good at fighting, it's hard to say, because the fighting power of the Shichibukai is very vague. But there is no doubt that the top figure among them must be Bartholomew Bear. After all, Orgrim admired him very much, especially his development of his abilities, which was simply outrageous. A superhuman flesh ball fruit, with such a deceptive ability, was outplayed by him and turned into a heaven-defying fruit ability. There is no doubt that among the 7 C's of martial arts under the king, he is the only one who can be said to be deserving of his title and can bear the title of the 3 major powers on the sea, and he is Bartholomew Bear. This guy's strength may not be much worse than his own. If he doesn't become King Shichibukai, he will put aside the inextricable connections between the identity of the former king and the Revolutionary Army. If he becomes a pirate, well, he might become a Yonko or something. Orgrim then continued to read the intelligence above. The intelligence pointed out that while Bartholomew Bear was on the throne, he had many disagreements with the world government and even had some violent conflicts. In the end, the world government used various means to cause the economy of the Sorbet kingdom to collapse during the rule of Bartholomew Bear, and the people were in dire straits. Then he continued to stigmatize him, and finally, a pioneer king who was determined to reform the current situation and ills of the country became a tyrant. In fact, it would be very simple for a world government to do this. Their control over the franchised countries is also very good. For example, directly cutting off the commercial routes around the Kingdom of Sorbet will soon lead to a national economic recession and widespread public dissatisfaction. Then, using fishing boats to set the pace, the ignorant citizens will transfer their anger to the king. Then the world government can force the king to step down according to the Treaty of the Alliance countries, and replace him with an obedient one. This is not the first time the world government has done this. Bartholomew Bear is obviously one of the victims. After being exiled from the Kingdom of Sorbet, Bartholomew Bear disappeared for several years, but not long ago, he went to sea as a pirate. And this guy is very violent and doesn't like looting ordinary people or the navy. On the contrary, he is very enthusiastic about attacking his peers, especially those notorious pirates. As long as you are met by Bartholomew Bear, you will definitely be reincarnated directly. So soon, Bartholomew Bear had the title of Pirate Tyrant, and the bounty quickly reached 200 million belly. In Orgrim's view, the bounty was definitely low and completely unworthy of Bartholomew Bear's strength. But he can also understand that, after all, from the perspective of the world government and navy, the threat of Bartholomew Bear is not very high, it can even be said to be very low. Firstly, he does not attack the navy, secondly, he does not attack ordinary port towns and countries, thirdly, he prefers to rob pirates. What the hell, isn't he just a righteous man in the guise of a pirate? A hero driven by interest? This guy has entered a new world. Does that mean that the Revolutionary Army has any changes and plans? In the past few years, although I occasionally heard that Darag had committed misdeeds somewhere, but there is very little real information about the Revolutionary Army. It seems that the world government cannot catch them, and it cannot be said to be incompetent. The Revolutionary Army is really too cunning. Orgrim smacked his lips. The last time he met Dalag was on Roger's execution day. Dalag intended to win over him, but he directly rejected him. Orgrim thought that Darag would come to bother him again, but it turned out not to be the case. This guy never came to him again. Even now that the arms business in the Dark World is booming, the Revolutionary Army has not become its customer. This made Orgrim a little unhappy. If you don't buy my arms, are you going to fight against the world government with your life? Can you be a little more motivated? Let me make more money. However, although I don't know what Bartholomew Bear is going to do in the new world, for Orgrim, it has nothing to do with his Warhammer pirates, so Orgrim opened the book again to the next page. This time, Orgrim was even more surprised. Mariah, the loser, has re-entered the new world? It shouldn't be. Shouldn't he be playing with corpses in the Devil's Triangle? Why are you regrouping now? Orgrim murmured in surprise. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 305. In Orgrim's impression, although Moria has a great reputation, his strength is obviously not enough. First, he was pushed to the ground and violently hammered by himself who had just entered the new world, and he ran away with his inexplicable ability. After dormant for a few years, he fought another battle with Kaido in Wano country. During this period, his strength should have improved a lot, but after all, he was no match for Kaido. Kaido pushed him to the ground and rubbed him again, killing all his subordinates. This guy Moria stole Ryoma's body and ran away with Black Sword Kyushui. Then, the navy invited him to become the king of the Shichibukai. These were all within Orgrim's expectations. According to these trajectories, Moria's ambition should have collapsed and become an abandoned house, nestled in the Devil's Triangle in the first half of the Grand Line, surrounded by corpses all day long, dreaming about using zombie legions to counterattack the New World. I have indeed received information in this regard before, saying that Mariah has not appeared again since he became the king of the Shichibukai. The last sighting was when his huge terrifying three-mast sailboat entered the fog. Isn't this good? Is it normal? Why did this guy suddenly run back to the New World? But soon, Orgrim's expression became a little clearer. After all, because of his presence, the development of the New World is completely different from the original story, and it is normal for some of Moria's behaviors and judgments to be affected. When he thought that this guy was now keen on collecting strong corpses to form his undead zombie army, Orgrim seemed to understand his operation. Look, there is a war going on in the New World right now. The Warhammer pirates and the Big Mom pirates are fighting, and no one knows how many people are going to die every day. Due to the opening of the Great Pirate Age, a steady stream of new pirates began to pour into the New World. As soon as they entered the New World, a large number of them were directly captured by Orgrim and Charlotte Lingling, who spent a lot of money to buy their lives. Come and join the war. Here, those guys who are unlucky and weak are constantly being eliminated. The surviving elite gradually became their solid strength. I don't know how many pirates who came to the New World to pursue their dreams died in this war. Aren't these all corpses? Moria wants to find the body of the strong man, but in this low-level war now, there has been no death of the strong man. But no matter what, the number of people who can participate in the war in the New World is better than those in the first half of the Grand Line. Those in Paradise were much stronger. After all, those who are weak cannot enter the New World at all. Only when your strength and luck reach a certain level can you enter the New World, a paradise for the strong, and participate in a larger stage. Then Moria most likely came here for the corpses created in the war. Even if this guy does something during this period, it is not incomprehensible. But I want to rely on the so-called undead army to counterattack the New World. I really don't know what this guy is thinking. Orgrim smacked his lips slightly and said, "The so-called undead army, zombie army, etc., sound very high-end. But in fact, there is no problem in dealing with those ordinary minions. In the face of high-end combat power, it is what a joke. No matter who you are in the New World, if you want to reach the top position, you may have to use many methods, but none of them is truly powerful. Only with enough strength can you control everything. Moly, if Ya can fully develop his shadow fruit, there is still some hope." After all, Orgrim believes that the fruit's ability is also very powerful. But if he chooses to take the wrong approach, he will just taste the bitter fruit of failure again. Think of this. Orgrim has lost all interest in Moria. The New World is not something that people like him can play well. When will his mentality be corrected? Will he truly have the stage to return to the New World? Qualification. After turning over Moria's information, Orgrim continued to read it. Several pieces of information did not arouse Orgrim's interest anymore. He focused on studying the recent situation of the Navy. After all, his meeting with Kaido should put some pressure on the Navy, right? After watching it for a long time, I found that the Navy did not take any unnecessary actions and was developing step by step. There was no sign of action towards the New World. Although Orgrim, it's a bit strange, but it's not incomprehensible. After all, even if the Navy has ideas, their influence in the New World is limited, and it's normal that they can't make any effective response. Just lie down? Do not care, Orgrim curled his lips and muttered. Since the Navy didn't take any action, Orgrim didn't want to cause trouble, so he could just continue the war with the Big Mom pirates quietly. It was almost noon, and Orgrim came from. I picked up the phone bug on the table and dialed Beckman. "What's wrong?" Beckman asked very casually after picking up the phone. "Ah, it's nothing. Would you like to come over for lunch?" Orgrim asked with a smile. Beckman's phone was silent for a moment, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he replied with a smile, "No, I heard that Stussy went to do it for you personally. It's time to cook. What kind of light bulb should I be at this time?" "Enjoy it." Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then said, "You guy, how did you know it so quickly? Are you spying on me?" "What do you mean?" "I'm not spying on you. I'm mainly keeping an eye on someone." "Don't you know?" Beckman said with a smile. Although the members of the Warhammer Pirates all regarded Stussy as one of their own, in fact, when Stussy was walking in the Warhammer Pirates, there were still many people there, paying attention to her. As the second in command, Beckman, of course, had to keep a close eye on Stussy. The two chatted for a while, and Orgrim asked Beckman if there was anything he needed help with. Beckman said it was nothing. Then they hung up the phone bugs. Then, Orgrim didn't seem to give up, and used the phone bug to contact Neiman, Sphinx, and others, hoping to invite them to come together. Eat lunch. Unexpectedly, even Sphinx, a grumpy little Lolita, rejected his invitation and said she wanted to go for dessert with Neiman. This made Orgrim very confused and a little doubtful about life. Am I, the captain, so shameless? I personally invited my men to have lunch with me and all of them said no? I always feel like I am becoming more and more out of tune with this pirate group. Could this be the legendary Mihawk phenomenon? Orgrim murmured, stroking his chin. On the other side, Sphinx and Neiman had just walked out of the kitchen of the restaurant of the Warhammer Pirates. Their expressions were very exciting. Sphinx Kes is a greedy little girl. She often comes here to cook a small meal for herself. Today she and Neiman came to have a snack. After all, the chefs in the Warhammer Pirates are still very good. When they arrived at the restaurant, they found that the chef everyone was watching something, and Sphinx and Neiman also came over to take a look, and found that Queen Stussy was cooking seriously. Although her expression was very serious, with a more serious aura, but after just one look, the Sphinx lost all appetite. Is that food cooked by humans? Then, she and Neiman received an invitation from the boss of Orgrim, asking them to have lunch together. The Sphinx refused without hesitation. You can bear this kind of pain alone. Orgrim, who was like a useless person and was bored, found that everyone was busy and no one wanted to pay attention to him, so he lay down on the sofa and fell asleep. The only good thing about Avalon is that as long as you turn off the lights, you can enter the dark night at any time and sleep happily. After sleeping for about half an hour, Orgrim was in a daze when he vaguely heard the sound of the door being opened, followed by the sound of footsteps. Orgrim was very familiar with this footsteps, it was Stussy's light steps. Before Orgrim opened his eyes, he smelled the smell of oil smoke, which made him feel a little emotional. Although Queen Stussy could not be said to be pampered, she was also a very delicate and beautiful beauty. In order to give herself cooking makes the whole body smell of oil fumes. It's really, Orgrim was slightly moved. It's a pity, you are just a kid after all. Otherwise, it is not impossible to have a good relationship with Stussy. After all, this woman must have a good appearance, a good figure, a good temperament, be smart enough, and have her own career, so she can really give Austria. Grimm has brought a lot of help. If it weren't for a young boy, it would be perfect. Mr. Hammer, Stussy walked over to Orgrim who was sleeping soundly, reached out and touched his cheek, with a gentle smile on his face, and called softly. Orgrim also opened his eyes, sniffed and said, "It's a blessing for you to have such a strong smell of oil smoke. I'll leave it to the chefs in the future." Stussy said with a smile, "No, I seem to have found the joy of cooking. Come and try my craftsmanship. If you are still satisfied, Master Zui, I will cook it for you every day from now on." Orgrim smiled and sat up from the sofa. His head passed by Stussy and he smelled the fragrance coming from her body. He felt refreshed and the sleepiness just now was gone. Etc. Fragrant. So where did this oily smoke smell come from? Orgrim glanced at Stussy in surprise. He didn't pay attention just now, but now he looked carefully, he was still the exquisite Stussy. He had obviously just touched up his makeup, and the color of his lipstick was the same as before. It was different when she went to cook. It was obvious that she had resprayed her perfume just now. Before Orgrim could react, Stussy pulled Orgrim to the dining table and asked Orgrim to. Grim sat on his seat, and she thoughtfully tied a triangular napkin around Orgrim's neck. Then, Stussy sat across from Orgrim with a smile, resting his elbows on the table, supporting his head with both hands, staring at Orgrim contentedly like a flower. Orgrim looked at the dishes on the table with a stiff expression. The rice was half burnt. If those dishes were not on the plates, Orgrim would have thought they were scraps. Chemical industry, that kind. What is the name of the purple mud-like dish? Orgrim asked, pointing to one of the dishes with a helpless expression. It was delicious, and Orgrim couldn't even understand what it was. To put it bluntly, it was a bit like Beckman's venom condensed into the feeling of mud. This is a nutritious curry sauce that I carefully prepared. Come on, I'll pour it on your rice. It will definitely be very delicious, Stussy said with a smile. Then, she picked up the spoon from the table, scooped 2 spoons of the curry juice, and poured it on Orgrim's half-burnt rice. Orgrim glanced at the spoon. Why did it always feel slightly corroded? Isn't this really the food cooked by Beckman? Orgrim fell into deep doubt. Then Orgrim looked at Stussy and said, "Aren't you going to eat?" Stussy's face was a little stiff, and then she quickly shook her head and said, "I won't eat it." When the food was just prepared, Stussy had already tasted it, and it felt like, don't be too sour and refreshing. Originally, he planned to throw away the food, but he thought that he had volunteered to cook, and in the end, Orgrim didn't get to eat a bite. That was not good. So Stussy arranged for the chefs to cook some food for Orgrim, and she brought these to Orgrim. Reem looked at it and believed that as long as he took one bite, he would stop eating. By then, he would have cooked for Orgrim, so that's all. Then we can naturally remove the dishes from the table and replace them with meals prepared by the chefs. Wouldn't that be great? Just when Stussy was thinking about this, he suddenly found that Orgrim had already started eating. Although his face was very pale, he still finished the rice with curry sauce in 3 or 5 times. Stussy looked at Orgrim in surprise and exclaimed, "Master Hammer. I have to say, apart from being pretty, you are a woman with absolutely no merits. The food you cook is simply poisonous. Could it be that you got the ingredients from Beckman?" Orgrim unceremoniously criticized Stussy's cooking. But as he spoke, he gritted his teeth and tasted all of Stussy's food, and finally understood where the smell of oily smoke came from. Got it, these are the damn dishes. No one could control the heat well, either it was burned into black residue or it was half-cooked. With your skills, if I hadn't been physically strong and invulnerable to all poisons, I would have died on the spot after just one bite, Orgrim muttered while eating the black coal-like meat. Stussy, who originally wanted to say something, gradually softened his expression. Looking at the cursing Orgrim, there was a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were slightly moist. "Master Chewie, why don't you just stop eating? I asked someone to make a new table and it will be served soon," Stussy said softly. "Alas, you have done everything. Although the taste is extremely bad, it is simply the most disgusting meal I have eaten in more than 20 years, but it's very delicious. Let's eat this today," Orgrim said without raising his head. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 306. Like a storm, he forcibly ate all the poisonous dishes made by Stussy. Orgrim felt like he had been through hell. He burped involuntarily, and a stream of lavender smoke floated out of his mouth. Rubbing his belly, Orgrim seemed to feel like he was back in Behi, when he and Beckman practiced toxin resistance for the first time. I'm obviously a big boss who stomps his feet and makes the whole world tremble. Why do I have to suffer here? Why suffer here? Is this life? Your meal reminds me of memories from many years ago, that was my lost youth. Orgrim said with a twitching look on his face. Then he saw that Stussy's eyes were slightly moist, so he asked in surprise, "What's wrong with you?" Stussy was stunned for a moment, then stretched out her hand to wipe her eyes, and said with a smile, "The smell of oil smoke is so strong that it almost makes me cry." "Just smelling this smell will make you cry, so think about how painful it must be for me to eat all this," Orgrim complained harshly. Stussy smiled, and then said a little aggrievedly, "This is my first time cooking. If you don't like it, I won't do it anymore." Seeing Stussy's appearance, Orgrim was silent for a moment. Everyone has feelings. Although he knew that Stussy was a young boy, he was still more or less the same person who slept with him, and Orgrim would not be able to tolerate some trivial matters. Forget it, the chef also made it step by step. If you like it, just do it, and you will definitely make progress. But let me warn you first, never give the food you cook to others. Especially the officers of my Warhammer pirates. If you take them all down, wouldn't it be chaos? Orgrim said earnestly. As he spoke, he suddenly came back to his senses. "Damn it, Beckman, you bastard, you must have known what Stussy was doing, right? So I invited you to dinner and you refused. Damn it, don't you know how to say hello to me in advance? No matter what, I should be mentally prepared, right? Are these still good brothers? Thinking about Neiman and Sphinx again, they also couldn't speak clearly and rejected their invitations by pushing and shoving. Yes, do these people have no conscience? Stussy looked at Orgrim with a smile and said, okay, I will only cook for you from now on. Orgrim looked at Stussy with a toothache. This was obviously a very warm word. How come it sounds so perceptive to my own ears? Standing up and rubbing his belly, Orgrim walked a few steps, lay down on the sofa, and said no, I can't do anything today. I want to have a good sleep and relax, take a break from the mental pressure on me. Stussy glanced at Orgrim with a smile, did not speak, but started to put away the tableware. After finishing it, she turned her head and looked at Orgrim again, and found that Orgrim had closed his eyes and fell asleep, snoring slightly. She smiled, took the plates, and walked out of the house quietly. Looking at the starry night outside, Stussy stood in the courtyard holding a plate. A breeze blew by, lifting the tips of Stussy's hair. Under the moonlight, her appearance became more and more alluring. Stussy, what is it that you have been pursuing and looking for? Stussy whispered softly. Memories flashed through her mind like a tide. When I was very young, I became an orphan and was adopted by a nun. I thought that the church would be a kind place, but I slowly discovered that the nun was not a good person. She would treat a gifted child like myself. Resold to various organizations and earn a lot of money. After spending a period of time in confusion, he was sold to the world government and joined the CP organization. With his talents, he overcame many obstacles and difficulties in the dark and bloody CP organization, and finally became a member of the CP organization. A top agent. Joined the highest body of the CP organization, CP-0. There is still intrigue. Not only do we have to face external threats, but internal strife is also very serious. There are only a few positions for senior agents in the CP agency, and everyone wants to sit in them. It seems that only by sitting in this position can we truly find freedom. Stussy is no exception. With her outstanding abilities and extraordinary skills, she got what she wanted. And also became the queen of Happy Street in the dark world. She liked this identity, left Marijoa, left the prison of the world government, and finally smelled the breath of freedom on the sea. She enjoyed everything in Happy Street as if she was really a high-ranking queen. But occasionally in the middle of the night, Stussy would wake up and recall her true identity. Yes, the superior queen of Happy Street was, after all, just a pawn of the CP agency. Seemingly free, yet trapped in a cage. Everyone says that the sea is extremely broad. As long as you are willing to search for it, you will eventually be able to find your own place and a partner you can trust. But Stussy didn't understand what kind of naive person could say such a thing. The sea is indeed extremely wide, but how can there be so much room in this world? A trusted companion? That's a really luxurious idea. There is no real place for me, Stussy, in this world. Everywhere I look is a prison. In this world, there has never been a companion that I, Stussy, can truly trust. Whether it is Happy Street or the CP agency, they are all jailers. Drifting on the sea, the heart that pursues freedom and dependence has long since died amid repeated betrayals and prisons. Perhaps I, Stussy, am destined to be a tragic character, an unlucky guy who drifts with the crowd and will sink into this falsehood and pain until the end of the world. There is no need to feel sorry for yourself, because this is not an exception. There are people like me everywhere in the sea, and there are even countless people who are even more miserable than me. But knowing these truths, why do you envy the people of the Warhammer Pirates from the bottom of your heart when you see them? Why, when I saw Orgrim, My heart that was supposed to be dead seemed to be beating again. If I hadn't met him, I would have been happy to play such a sad and ridiculous character, but able to live a decent life, right? Queen of Happy Street, Stussy murmured softly. A sad smile appeared on her face. One wrong step, people are often like this. In certain things, they get deeper and deeper into trouble. Stu 1111 knew that he should not have any illusions about Orgrim. He should know very well what kind of guy Orgrim was. Although he looked gentle, it was really hard to let go of him. But when he became cruel at that time, people could still die without a burial place. Stussy, he is an evil skull crusher, the public enemy of mankind, the source of chaos, and the most cruel and evil pirate in the world today. The number of people who died in his hands is immeasurable, and the number of people who died because of him is even more, countless. There are boundless sins in him. He has been a pirate for so many years. Can't you still see clearly? There are a few pirates who can start well and end well. Maybe in the future, he will also be like the pirate heroes in the past, like fireworks, dying at the most brilliant moments. Stussy whispered softly. Stussy wanted to persuade herself. She knew that if she took any wrong step, she would die without a burial place. As long as you follow the plan and follow the orders, Orgrim will soon be unlucky. He may even die in this conspiracy. By then, he will be just a brilliant firework, passing by in a flash, and you Stussy is still the famous Queen of Happy Street. With these achievements, you can get a better life, Stussy, that's what you're after, isn't it? Stussy said to herself with a touch of warm tears in her eyes. Ken, Stussy murmured softly, and then whispered, what is a better life? As soon as these words fell, the first thing that came to her mind was Orgrim. On the boat, he poured hot water for himself and brewed brown sugar. In Dressrosa, the two looked like a couple in love, looking at the scenery together. Even when he made a bunch of meals that couldn't be described as unpalatable, Orgrim still looked like he was eating them cleanly. Ming was very disgusted and cursed, but when he said I feel very sweet, his heart was moved. All the answers seemed to have been known for a long time. People cannot deceive themselves. Even if they can deceive themselves for a while, they will eventually realize what it means to deceive themselves. Stussy finally realized that it seemed that she was the real Stussy only when she was with Orgrim. The rest of the time, she was just the so-called Queen of Happy Street. The life I want to pursue and the support I want to pursue seem to have already appeared. The sea is extremely broad. Will you eventually meet the person you want? Stussy smiled bitterly. Yes, she met the person she wanted, but so what? If she continued to deceive and play the role of the Queen of Happy Street, before Orgrim's accident, she was still I can stay by Orgrim's side like I am now. But if I open my mouth and confess everything to Orgrim, what may come is the hammer of destruction, which represents death. The courage and determination that he had just mustered up dissipated at this moment. But this time, Stussy realized something. What he was afraid of was not death, but Orgrim's disgusted expression after knowing the truth. So even if it is false and the sand cannot be held, Stussy still wants to be happy with Orgrim in his current state. She couldn't imagine how embarrassed she would be after everything was exposed. She didn't want to see Orgrim's cold gaze on her. Sorry, Mr. Hammer, forgive me for being a timid and selfish woman, forgive me for being a stupid woman who escapes reality and indulges in falsehood, Stussy murmured softly. Then, she looked up at the moonlight and smiled. The moonlight was beautiful, and Stussy's smile was also beautiful. But in the end, it's all a mirror image. After all, Stussy couldn't muster the courage to talk to Orgrim. She had the usual smile on her face again, carrying the dinner plate, and walked out of the courtyard with light steps. It was as if everything was no different from before. Previously, the reward was enough to add an update, but I couldn't write it out in time. Today is the weekend, I will add this update, and by the way, Please give me some monthly tickets and flowers. Maybe Queen Stussy has the pose been unlocked. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 307. Orgrim was just casually comforting Stussy. As a result, he never expected that Stussy would actually take it seriously and cook him meals on a whim every now and then. Although it can be felt that Stussy's craftsmanship is indeed improving, at least the rice is no longer mushy. But those dishes are really cheating. However, Orgrim could only grit his teeth and admit the harsh words he said. Fortunately, it's not unrewarded. Stussy seems to have let go of her reserve. When she's burning the midnight oil, she can do more postures, and she can tolerate the new moves that she didn't want to try. It comforted Orgrim's injured heart. Apart from Orgrim's frequent hardships and sugar cravings during this period, everything in Avalon went smoothly without any messy accidents. Everything is proceeding step by step, and various plans are becoming more and more perfect. At the same time, in a certain sea area of the New World, a huge three-mast sailing ship was sailing. This is said to be a ship, but in fact, it is a transformed floating island. And this ship is the vehicle of the great pirate Moonlight Moria. In the past 2 years, with Moria's defeat in the New World, his reputation has also fallen a lot. Not many people knew about his conflict with Orgrim in his early years. The Navy only found out about it when it was investigating Moria's suitability to join the Shishibukai. Therefore, before the war with Kaido, Moria's reputation was also very powerful, not much worse than Crocodile. But now, both of them have taken a break. Crocodile is still causing trouble in Alabasta. In fact, the Warring States General also thought about whether to arrange Crocodile to do this. After all, in his senses, Crocodile was much more reliable than Moonlight Moria, both in terms of strength and mind. Although they are all hidden in the first half of the Grand Line, Moria is an abandoned house, and Crocodile is still active at least. But after careful consideration, the Warring States General decided that Moria would do the job. Because it is obvious that there is conflict and hatred between Moria and Orgrim, so his tone is more reliable. As for Crocodile, although he is better in all aspects, he has no grudge against Orgrim. A sudden attack on the Warhammer pirates or something seems too abrupt, and the traces of conspiracy are heavier. Moreover, Crocodile briefly joined forces with Orgrim once in Rogtown. Who knows if there is any bad blood between them? The most important thing about this plan is stability and concealment. Although Moria was a little disappointed, it was still bearable. In order to make up for Moria's weakness, Warring States also took great pains to send Garp out to assist Moria. After all, even though Enel was a newcomer, based on the gradual improvement of the intelligence, he also discovered a phenomenon, that is, there was a reason why Orgrim could release him. Because this guy's performance is very good, the Haki of the Wisdom color is the most outstanding, and the Haki of the Armament color is not weak either, and he is a user with the ability of the Thunder Fruit. Moria, although his strength was not bad, Warring States still felt a little unreasonable in his heart. Don't worry, I have already arranged it here. You, Moria, go up and do some operations, and you will get it for free. Then shouldn't I just sit on the wax? I finally got through to Wulaoxing and supported this plan. If you mess it up for me, how can I have the nerve to report to Mary Joa? So Warring States sent Garp here. Even if Moria is no good, with Garp as a top player, he can pass this copy, right? At this time, on this terrifying three-mast sailboat, Mariah was eating with Garp. Although the two are currently cooperating, one is a pirate and the other is a navy. Even though Moria is the king of the Shishibukai, Garp still dislikes him. Of course, Garp didn't look kindly on Mariah, and the two of them often wouldn't speak to each other for several days. However, there are some things that need to be communicated today. News has come from CP and they have discovered the whereabouts of Elnilu. They are currently rushing there. Garp, as long as I capture Enel, Can you really guarantee that I can take revenge on that bastard Orgrim? Maria glanced at Garp while eating the steak. Garp was eating at this time. After swallowing the meat in his mouth, he frowned and looked at Maria with some displeasure. You only need to implement the plan we arranged for you. The ultimate goal of this plan is to eradicate Orgrim. I have no need or obligation to explain the rest to you. Humph, that's a beautiful thing to say. In the end, don't we have to rely on our king, Shishibukai, to take care of things? If your navy really has this ability, wouldn't it be over if you just go to Avalon and kill Orgrim? Maria snorted coldly. Garp glared at Maria fiercely, and then said, Maria, don't think you are some bullshit. The king of Shishibukai can point fingers at our navy. If this operation is if you fail, the navy headquarters has the right to directly deprive you of your Shishibukai status. I will not care about Orgrim at that time, and I will be the first to attack you. Maria's expression changed slightly. Of course he felt unhappy after being threatened like this by Garp. But in the past, Maria might have turned over the table and quit in a domineering manner, but now, he is really being threatened by Kaido. This kind of really ruthless person is afraid of being beaten, and he has lost the arrogance he used to have. And Garp is a famous naval hero. Whether he is convinced or not, Maria has to admit that he can't beat him. So he hesitated in his heart. After a while, Moria pretended to snort coldly, expressing his dissatisfaction, but he didn't dare to talk nonsense. In 3 days, we will come into contact with Enelu. His thunder fruit is also very fast. If you really want to run away, it may be difficult to catch it. Are you sure that your fruit ability can block a certain space? Garp didn't talk nonsense to Moria and asked directly. Moria looked a little ugly when he heard Garp's suspicion, but he still said no problem, as long as that Eneludan get on my ship and I'll be able to block the entire ship with shadows. After a pause, Moria added, but Garp, according to the agreement, if Orgrim can be killed directly, his body and the bodies of his subordinates will all have to be killed. Belong to me. That's right, neither warring states nor Garp had any intention of keeping Orgrim this time, nor did they intend to imprison him in Impelton. Their mentality was to just kill Orgrim and be done with it. As for his subordinates, they can be imprisoned in Impelton. But there is no need to make these words so clear to Moria. Garp nodded casually and said, our navy will not go back on what we promised. To be honest, although there is hatred between Moria and Orgrim, it is not a life and death feud. Leah just lost one devil fruit to Orgrim once. Does this count? Using this as a reason alone, the navy really couldn't persuade Moria, the abandoned house, to come out and go against a ruthless person like Orgrim. But the navy caught Moria's little thoughts and promised that once Orgrim was killed, his body could be handed over to Moria for arrangement as a bargaining chip in the deal. Yes, after all, the Shishibukai under the king is a unit on the same level as the navy headquarters. In this matter, it is better for you and me to be willing, and it is more appropriate for the interests of both parties to be tied up. Therefore, Sengoku did not use the forced transfer order granted to him by the 5 old stars. Come and recruit Moria. Instead, we discussed business with him. Moria was quite interested in Orgrim's body. Among the 3 most famous monsters on the sea, one is the steel balloon Charlotte Lingling, which has strong defense and amazing strength. One is the strongest creature, Hyundai Kaido. Needless to say, he is an all-rounder in the sea, land, and air. And the last one is Hosgarot Orgrim, who is said to be immortal, master the power of the night. No matter what serious injuries he suffers, he can recover quickly without leaving any sequelae, and is extremely powerful. If he could get his body, Moria even felt that he might be able to seek revenge on Kaido. He and Kaido had a real blood feud. All his subordinates died in Kaido's hands. At the same time, on the Cake Island of Wanguo Totlan, Charlotte Lingling was also reading a piece of information in her hand. Of course, Charlotte Lingling knew about Kaido's meeting with Orgrim, and soon, she investigated some reliable information and results. The Big Mom pirates are said to have the strongest intelligence in the pirate industry. This is not a boast. They are indeed very good at intelligence. So Charlotte Lingling soon learned that Orgrim and Kaido had not reached an agreement such as a pirate alliance, which made her feel a little relieved. But she also knew that the relationship between Orgrim and Kaido had indeed become more friendly, and she would have to guard against these two bastards in the future. However, these are all things in the past. The information Charlotte Lingling is looking at this time is very confidential information. It's just that this information is a bit vague, which makes Charlotte Lingling very irritated. What the hell is this? What I said above is all in the air and there is nothing useful at all. I want more accurate information. After Charlotte Lingling read it, she threw the information to the ground and cursed. This information was really inexplicable. It said that the Navy was probably organizing an attack against a large pirate group in the New World. Conspiracy, but there is no evidence at all, it is all based on rumors. It is not even clear who it is targeting, so it makes Charlotte Lingling very irritable. What if the Navy wants to deal with me? Right? I have to wait until the Navy reaches the port of Cake Island before I know who they are targeting? After calming down for a while, Charlotte Lingling began to think about the situation in this new world. Assuming this news is true, what kind of conspiracy is the Navy doing? Who are they most likely to attack? Whitebeard, right? After all, Whitebeard is the symbol of pirates. Nowadays, many people on the sea say that this era is the era of Whitebeard. They pirates listen to this, it's all harsh, let alone the world government and the Navy. When did an era get named by pirates? But think about it carefully, that guy from Newgate has been very stable in recent years, not very active. Know what kind of threats and troubles does it bring to the world government and the Navy? So under normal circumstances, the world government and the Navy have no reason to take the initiative to provoke him. So, will this target be himself? It should be. After all, among the four big pirates, it seems that he is the most active. And his influence is getting bigger and stronger, and he has even formed a pirate nation, which can be regarded as crushing the face of the world government to the ground. In this way, if the world government wants to, there are reasons and motivations to clean up themselves, but what will they do? Nowadays, the New World War is pervasive. If the Navy really wants to find a breakthrough, it should find an opportunity in this war with the Warhammer pirates. Right? Thinking of this, Charlotte Lingling looked at Katakuri, who was not far away in front of her, and said, "Katakuri, tell those losers in the intelligence department to keep an eye on the war front line to see if there is any movement. Report them all to me immediately, whether it's ours or the Warhammer pirates." "Yes, Mom," Katakuri responded softly. As for King Shishibukai, Moonlight, of course Charlotte Lingling also received the news of Leah's return to the New World. But like Orgrim, she didn't think much about it. This was normal. It was too common for pirates to win or lose. After losing, it was reasonable to be prepared and re-enter the New World. As for Moria's appearance in the New World at this point in time, could it be a conspiracy with the Navy or something? Charlotte Lingling never thought about this at all. Everyone in the sea knows that the Oishi Shishibukai has almost been turned into a loser by the Navy headquarters. Until now, there are only two people in it, and they can be said to be losers. The Navy headquarters and the King's Shishibukai have always been at loggerheads with each other. Would a just Navy collude with pirates? In the absence of precedent, Charlotte Lingling would not think this way at all. In fact, most people in the sea think this way, and Orgrim does the same. What's more, what can Amir Moria do? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 308. On the terrifying three-mast sailboat, the power of dark shadow shrouded the surroundings, forming a huge shadow box. The powerful power of thunder and lightning struck the shadow box, but it could not break through the shadow box. The huge figure of Moonlight Mowgli pressed his hands on the ground, and the continuous power of shadow provided strong support to the shadow box. He had no intention of starting a fight with Enelu. And the task Garp gave him was also very simple, that is, just to block the escape route of Enelu. If you can't even do this, what the hell do you think you are, the king of the Shishibukai? I, Garp, won't capture Orgrim anymore. I'll just turn around and kill you, this loser. 50 million volts Brontosaurus, Enelu flew in the air, raised his hand and struck out with the thick thunder dragon. However, Garp refused to dodge, and was wrapped in dark-armed domineering energy. With his own iron fist, he hit the thunder dragon. The domineering fist directly smashed the roaring thunder dragon's head, and the dazzling thunder and lightning elements overflowed in the air. Just when Garp was about to hit Enelu, an arc flashed in Enelu's eyes, and the next second, the figure disappeared directly from the air. Garp's iron fist suddenly fell into the air, and at the same time, Enel's figure appeared behind Garp. "Thunderbird," Enelu shouted in a low voice. The thunder and lightning at his fingertips turned into a roaring thunderbird and crashed into Garp. Garp stepped on the air, activated the moon step, and his body bent directly, very neatly. Dodged the blow. "Shave," Garp chuckled softly. The next second, his figure suddenly appeared in front of Enelu, and punched Enelu violently. In a hurry, Enelu's arms across was blocked in front of the chest, and the armed color haki wrapped around him, assuming a defensive posture. But Garp's iron fist was powerful and heavy, and the powerful armed color haki directly dispersed Eniro's haki, and with a fierce blow, Enel was shot down from the air and hit the ground. Fist fall, a ruthless look flashed in Garp's eyes, and he stepped on the air again. Like a cannonball, he rushed out of the air and directly hit Enelu on the ground. Electricity flashed on Enelu's body, and he rushed the moment Garp fell. He disappeared from the place again. A powerful punch hit the ground, causing the entire terrifying three-mast ship to tremble. If this ship was not indeed big enough, I am afraid it would not be able to accommodate Garp and Enel's battle. Enel was also very impatient at this time. He didn't want to fight Garp here at all, because he knew very well that he couldn't beat Garp at all. Don't look at the situation now, which seems to be in a stalemate. But in fact, he is trying his best. As for Garp, he may still be in a warm-up state. Even so, he has almost no power to fight back. He can only rely on the speed of the thunder fruit to continuously. He wandered around, avoiding Garp's onslaught, and took the time to counterattack. But once Garp figured out his own routine and mastered this rhythm, the situation would definitely turn around quickly. So now Enero just wants to quickly start from escape here, but unfortunately, that damn Moonlight Moria used the power of shadow to create a huge shadow box, sealing all the surrounding space. If you give him a certain amount of time, Enelu still has confidence breaks this blockade. After all, he holds in his hands the power of the Thunder Fruit, which is known as the strongest. But it would be very uncomfortable if Garp kept chasing him. No matter what Moria said, it would be a king descends to the Shishibukai. Damn it, the king's Shishibukai teamed up with the naval heroes, there must be a conspiracy. If nothing else, it should be a trap set for Lord Orgrim using me as a breakthrough point, right? Enelu was thinking in his heart while avoiding the ferocious Garp. Although he couldn't figure out what they were going to do for the time being, there was no doubt that if he fell into their hands, it would cause huge damage to the Warhammer pirates. The threat. After briefly distanced himself from Capra, Enelu grabbed a bolt of lightning power in his hand, threw it out, and hit Moonlight Moria. The fury of thunderstorm, Enelu said softly. The dazzling electric light, with the powerful power of thunder, attacked Moria. At the same time, Enelu grabbed a thick thunder slurry in his hand again. As long as Moria had a trace of if there is a flaw, Enelu will most likely break this damn shadow box and escape from this place. However, when the thunder and lightning struck Moria, the shadow under Moria's feet suddenly jumped out and turned into a shadow mage of the same size as him. Moria didn't dodge anything at all, his hands were still on the ground, and he was constantly releasing the power of shadow. And the shadow mage didn't do any fancy operations, he just blocked it. Before hitting the power of thunder, after the two forces collided, the shadow mage's figure became slightly blurred, but it did not collapse. It blocked the blow for Moria. Hateful, Enila cursed secretly. At the same time, Garp's figure had already rushed towards him at an extremely fast speed. Enelu had to throw the thunder plasma that was originally intended to break the shadow box towards Garp. Thunderstorm Brontosaurus! Enelu shouted angrily. The thick thunder pulp was scattered by Garp's punch. Enelu turned into lightning again without hesitation, trying to distance himself from Garp. When Garp's punch failed, he jumped from his arms. He took out a piece of senbei, and the armed color haki and the knowledge color haki unfolded at the same time. The originally fragile senbei in his hand was instantly enveloped by the armed color haki and turned into something like a small black stone. At the same time, the knowledge color haki also unfolded. Captured the figure of Enel, who appeared again. Please eat some senbei, Garp laughed loudly, and at the same time, the senbei in his hand flew towards Enelu. As soon as Enelu appeared, the sound of breaking through the air came. The next moment, his chest hurt, as if he had been shot. At the same time, Garp took a step forward and appeared directly behind Enel, grabbed the gap between Enel, and punched out. Fistbone meteor, Garp shouted in a low voice. The powerful punch force came out from Enilu's back, making Enilu's eyes black, and he couldn't hold back a mouthful of blood and spit out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the strong force led him towards he hit the ground and smashed it again. Just when Enel was about to hit the ground, an electric arc flashed in his eyes, and his figure disappeared directly. Then, he appeared on the other side of the ground with staggering steps, and blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He did not say anything. He knew what he was saying, and it was useless to say anything at this time. The powerful power of thunder and lightning was quickly transmitted through the ground. The metal covered in the soil was pulled by the power of thunder and lightning, and quickly condensed, forming a one-handed war hammer. Enel suddenly grabbed the war hammer in his hand, and Garp also chased it down from the air. Thor's hammer, Enelu raised his hand and smashed the one-handed hammer towards Garp. With a smile on Garp's face, his iron fist hit the warhammer without mercy, knocking it directly flying out. However, at this moment, Enelu's eyes flashed, and the power of thunder and lightning broke out again. The warhammer that was originally knocked away by Garp's punch, was pulled by the thunder and lightning, and chased violently from behind Garp. He came back, pointed at Garp's buttocks, and struck it with the hammer. Although he had the protection of armed domineering, Garp was still affected by this hammer. The fist that was supposed to hit Enelu happened. At the same time, Enelu's figure, which didn't look particularly strong at first, quickly expanded and turned into a huge thunder god form. Lei Yan, Enelu slammed his palm down towards Garp. The huge power of thunder and lightning directly swallowed Garp. Little devil, let's have a taste of the Navy's fist of justice. Garp's figure withstood the huge power of thunder and lightning, and managed to break through Enel's attack. At this time, his figure was relatively small compared to Enel, but this powerful punch directly hit him on the round belly of Enelu in the state of thunder god. The powerful fist force came out of the body, and Enelu's thunder god state suddenly spit out a burst of plasma, and then quickly like a deflated rubber ball, shrunk down. Thunder blast, the manic thunder and lightning power on Enelu seemed to want to go berserk. At this moment, a dark shadow suddenly appeared from behind Enelu and hugged Enelu's figure suddenly. Moria, a ruthless look flashed in Enelu's eyes. Garp did not miss this opportunity and punched Enelu on the chest again. This blow hit Enelu and the shadow together on the ground. Anilu spat out a mouthful of old blood, and the electric light on his body flashed, and he wanted to teleport away from here, but at the same time, the shadow that fell with him instantly turned into a small black box. Locked Anilu inside. At the same time, seeing an evil smile on Mariah's face, he murmured softly, "I still don't have enough experience, Anilu." From beginning to end, Moria never launched any attack on Anilu, but at this critical moment, he caused great trouble to Anilu. At this moment, the shadow box that trapped Anilu became restless again. First it expanded, and then it was suppressed by Moria with the power of shadow. But soon, a violent aura gradually spread out from the shadow box, and then the shadow box expanded again. This time, Moria used all his remaining energy to suppress the shadow box while maintaining the closed space. But in the end I couldn't hold it back. A huge explosion sounded, and the shadow box was blown to pieces. The manic power of thunder and lightning instantly swept through the entire terrifying three-mast sailing ship, filling the enclosed space with restless thunder and lightning elements. Anilu's figure gradually emerged from the thunder and lightning, sweat dripping from his forehead and his face became slightly pale. Ben had been punched by Garp several times and was seriously injured. In order to get rid of Mariah's influence, he directly detonated the power of thunder in his body. The dazzling lightning that filled the air gradually dissipated, and Garp's strong figure appeared in Anilu's sight again. He didn't seem to be affected, except that the cloak of justice behind him was slightly scorched. Garp reached out and patted the dust on his shoulder, looked at Anilu and said, "Don't exert any more effort. You should also know that you can't run away. If you don't want to suffer more, it's still too late to surrender now." After a slight pause, although Garp hesitated, he continued, "You are not guilty of many crimes. If you go to Impelton and be imprisoned for a few years to polish your character, you may be able to join the Navy in the future. I can teach you personally." Although the fight lasted only a short time, Garp could also see that Anilu was very talented. Although the performance of the Thunder Fruit was not very good, after all, he had only obtained this power not long ago. To be in the current state, he is already considered very good. In Garp's view, Anilu's current crime is indeed not very serious. He has only been at sea for a year, and during this year, he has mostly been fighting with the Big Mom pirates and has not committed any serious crimes. He doesn't even have a few bounties on him. Considering that he was brought down by Orgrim from Sky Island, it is very likely that he became a pirate just because he came into contact with pirates like Orgrim first, and he was not born evil. If he performs well in Imperial, it is not impossible to give him a chance to start a new life in the future. After all, the Navy has no precedent of recruiting pirates. Wouldn't it then add another major force to the Navy? But before Garp could finish his words of persuasion to surrender, Anilu had an unruly smile on his face. "Ha ha 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 ha, these are not the words you, a naval hero, should say. Garp, when have you ever seen a surrendered Warhammer pirate's cotter? If you want to fight, fight, no need to say more." The electric light in Anilu's hand flashed and he responded arrogantly. Garp's face was a little gloomy. Although he had never participated in the Battle of the Shampoo Islands, Orgrim and others were at the end of their rope at that time, but they had no choice. "Surrender? You really don't learn well," Garp said coldly. After the words fell, his figure rushed towards an arrow like a cannonball. And the dazzling lightning appeared on the terrifying three-mast sailboat again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 309. It was night, and Orgrim had just exchanged some driving experiences with Stussy. At this time, he had just fallen asleep. Beside him, Stussy had a lazy look on his face, with his long legs pressed against Orgrim, looking very satisfied and sleeping soundly. Slight snoring circulated in the bedroom, everything was so peaceful. Just when Orgrim began to have a sweet dream, there was a sudden knock on the door. Bang bang bang. Snap, 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 snap. Lord Hammer. Lord Hammer. Stussy opened her eyes in a daze, and looked around confusedly. Then, she confirmed that someone was knocking on the door. Although she didn't know what was going on, Stussy still shook it with her hand. Shake Orgrim's head. Mr. Hammer, someone is knocking on the door. It seems to be Gangplank, Stussy said softly. Orgrim was shaken awake by Stussy, then yawned, and heard the rapid knock on the door. It's late at night, what the hell are you doing? Call the soul? Orgrim cursed secretly, and then shouted loudly, I heard it, don't knock again, my door is very expensive. If it gets damaged, won't I pay for it? Bastard guy. After moving his neck, Orgrim sat up from the bed, grabbed a pair of trousers and put them on, with his upper body naked, and walked out of the house. Stussy also lost sleep and didn't react just now. But after waking up a little at this time, Stussy thought of something. After living with Orgrim for so long, he has never seen anyone calling the door in the middle of the night. There is no doubt that a very urgent situation has occurred, otherwise who dare to disturb Orgrim's dream at this time? And what important event will happen at this point in time? Thinking of this, Stussy's face turned pale, and she quickly got dressed and walked out of the room. As soon as he came out of the bedroom, he saw Orgrim opening the door to the living room. It's late at night, what the hell are you doing? Something important happened, can't we talk about it tomorrow? Orgrim cursed. Gangplank did not respond to Orgrim's nonsense at all, but said eagerly, Master Hammer, something big happened. Of course I know something big is going on, otherwise I would give you, a bastard, some courage. How dare you knock on the door like this? Come on, what happened? Is there a rebellion? Or has that dead old lady Charlotte Lingling officially declared war on us? Orgrim asked in a deep voice. No, something happened to that guy from Enelu, Plank said quickly. An arrow. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. Neither he nor Gangplank noticed that when Stussy behind him heard the three words Enelu, his fingers suddenly clasped on the door frame of the bedroom, his expression changed. Pale. Sure enough, what is supposed to come has come. That's right, Mr. Hammer, something big happened. That bastard Moonlight Moria, for some reason, attacked Enel's ship. It seemed that the two sides started a fierce battle. Moria defeated Enel and captured he, Gangplank said with a somewhat anxious expression. A fierce look flashed in Orgrim's eyes. Moria. This bastard dares to mess with me? His first reaction was that he was cheating, and Moria is the seventh king of kings. Well, hey, could there be no conspiracy of the Navy or the world government in this? As for Enelu losing to Moria, Orgrim was not surprised. Even if Moria is a loser, he has been at sea for many years, which can be regarded as a close relationship with Moria. He was a big pirate at the same time, and Enelu had only been out at sea for a long time. He was just a newcomer. Even though he had the Thunder Fruit, there was definitely a certain gap between him and Moria in terms of strength and experience, so it was normal for him to lose. Orgrim also didn't expect that Garp would play an important role here. Then what? What's going on? Did that bastard Moria declare war on me? Orgrim asked in a deep voice. Gangplank saw that Orgrim didn't feel panic at all, and he felt a little calmer. Then he nodded and said, yes, Moria spread this matter. The sea has officially declared war on our Warhammer pirates. Huh, this bastard is really brave. I'm not afraid of blowing his head off with a hammer? Orgrim cursed angrily. After a slight pause, Orgrim asked, then what, where is this bastard? What does he want? There is no doubt that if he really wants to start a war, he does not need to capture Enel. He only needs to come to Avalon to cause trouble, and Orgrim will enter the scene in minutes to start the war. But the problem is, this guy chose to starting with Enelu, there must be demand for it. He is exiting the new world. Moria said that if we want to save Eniru, let us, the Warhammer pirates, go to the Devil's Triangle and fight with the Moria pirates. If we win, Eniru he will return the road to us intact, Plank said in a deep voice. Damn it, I gave that bastard Moria 10 courages, how dare he provoke me like this? Exit the new world? Huh, there must be a conspiracy here. Isn't that guy the king of the 7 warriors? Has the Navy taken any action? Orgrim asked in a deep voice. No, recent intelligence shows that the Navy is very normal and does not make any big moves, Plank also said quickly. The Navy didn't take action? Orgrim frowned slightly. He immediately suspected that the Navy was behind the trouble, but now the Navy has not taken action? No. This thing is so strange. There is definitely a conspiracy, but we haven't discovered it yet. I summoned the Cotters, and I was woken up. They were still asleep, and they all came to me for a meeting, Orgrim cursed. After the arrangements were made, Gangplank turned around and left to shake people. Orgrim closed the door, and as soon as he turned around, he saw something was wrong with Stussy's expression. Orgrim frowned slightly, seeming to be thinking about something in his heart. Mr. Hammer, what to do? Stussy looked at Orgrim and asked. She very much hoped that Orgrim would be cruel enough to abandon Enelru directly. In this case, no matter how many arrangements are made by the Navy and the world government, as long as Orgrim if Mu doesn't move, they will all sit on the wax. The most they can do is kill an Enel. Orgrim sneered and said, although I don't have Whitebeard's habit of beating the young ones until the old ones come out, but if you want to touch the people of my Warhammer pirates, I won't react at all. What do the people on the sea think of me, Orgrim? But, Master Chui is very likely to have a conspiracy here. Stussy couldn't help but say. Orgrim was a little surprised. Did you take the wrong position? Aren't you from the world government? Even if there is really a conspiracy here, you should find a way to dispel my doubts and let me step into this trap. Why do you still remind me? If Stussy comforts Orgrim, for example, let's fight to the Devil's Triangle in one go and fight exploding Moria, rescuing Eniru and so on. Orgrim must have thought too much. 80% of this will be the conspiracy of the world government. But Stussy didn't do this. This is true. Orgrim was a little surprised. Could it be that there really wasn't a world government and navy involved? But soon, he gave up on this realistic thoughts. How is that possible? Without the world government and the navy, there was no one behind him to support him. How could Moria have such courage? However, everything is well hidden now, and Orgrim can't think of anything for the time being. It's not that there may be a conspiracy, but there is 100% conspiracy. Orgrim said in a deep voice. Then he smiled at Stussy and said, I'm going to discuss this matter with the others. Why don't you just rest first? It's nothing. I fought all the way from behind. What kind of storms have I not seen? If you want to attack me, Orgrim, you have to see what these bastards are capable of. Stussy looked at Orgrim's confident smile and felt a little relieved. Yes, he is Orgrim. But in the end, Stussy still shook her head, looked at Orgrim with a firm look and said, Master Hammer, I am also the Queen of Happy Street after all, and I am not just some incompetent vase. If something like this happened, I also want to give you advice, may I? Orgrim's eyes darkened slightly. He really couldn't understand what Stussy was thinking. In this case, even if she was not a spy, as an outsider, she shouldn't be so active. Otherwise wouldn't there be more suspicion out of thin air? Orgrim stared into Stussy's eyes with piercing eyes. After a long time, he nodded and said, Okay, you come with me. Stussy breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know what was going on with her. At this time, it was best to watch the show quietly, and then find an inconspicuous opportunity to encourage Og in a subtle way. Rim is the right answer. But what are you doing now? Not only did you not encourage Orgrim, but you also reminded him? But for some reason, after saying these words, Stussy always felt that there was something wrong with him. The burden was a little lighter. Soon, Orgrim took Stussy to the conference room. Gangplank moved quickly. At this time, the cotters of the Warhammer pirates who were still in Avalon were all here. Neiman and Sphinx are even wearing pink pajamas. Orgrim also discovered for the first time that Neiman and Sphinx are wearing the same pajamas. Sphinx Kess even wore a very cute nightcap on his head, and his eyes were a little blurry, as if he hadn't woken up. Orgrim came in and sat directly at the head of the conference room. Stussy was quiet. Standing behind him, Beckman glanced at Orgrim in surprise. He was very puzzled. At this time, you brought Stussy, a young man, to a meeting? Did you really think that only Moria is causing trouble, right? Yes, the moment he got the news, Beckman was immediately convinced of one thing, that is, there must be a conspiracy behind this. Otherwise, give Moria some courage to the loser, he dares to ride on Orgrim's head. Is he feeling impatient and wants to see the scenery on the road to the underworld? Although he is not sure, there is a big pirate behind this, such as Charlotte Lingling or something like the Navy headquarters or the world government. But in short, shouldn't Stussy be involved in these? Orgrim took advantage of the situation and gave Beckman a reassuring and knowing look. He also wanted to test it. Look at Stussy. If Stussy really had the intention of guiding him to do what Orgrim does in this meeting, then there is no need to think too much. There must be something behind the scenes from the world government and the Navy headquarters. He stretched out his hand and knocked on the table, and after focusing everyone's attention, Orgrim said in a deep voice, I think everyone knows that the boy from Enel was captured by Moria, and more the most important thing is that that guy from Moria dared to use this to threaten and provoke me. After hearing this, the originally dazed Sphinx suddenly became energetic. She pulled off the pink nightcap she was wearing on her head and slapped it directly on the table. What else are you thinking about? Mr. Hammer? A guy like Moria dares to ride on the head of our Warhammer pirates. Why don't you give him a hard time? Otherwise, how can we hang out on the sea in the future? If you ask me, let's just rush to his lair, capture him and beat him to death. Wouldn't that be the end of it? Sphinx said irritably. As soon as Sphinx finished speaking, Beckman smiled helplessly, reached out and knocked her little head, and said, don't be so irritable, things haven't been settled yet. You know, the top priority is to understand the ins and outs of this first, and then make plans. Neiman spoke softly. Although Moria had some conflicts with her elder brother before, it is not a big deal for us pirates, and not many people know about it. If you really want to say it, Amolia has a bloody feud with Kaido. He returns to the New World and is the first to provoke us. What's the point? What's the point? There is a conspiracy. I think it's either the Navy or the world government. Orgrim said unceremoniously. We do not rule out the possibility of Charlotte Lingling, and even her possibility is not small. After all, we are currently at war with her. If she really wants to find an opportunity to start a full-scale war against us, she must find a way to weaken her first. A wave of our power is also very reasonable, Beckman said softly. As for Newgate and Kaido, it is unlikely. Whitebeard doesn't need to engage in these conspiracies at all. According to Kaido, the two sides have just reached a friendly and cooperative relationship. Even if everyone is a pirate and has no bottom line, is this too cheap? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 310. Charlotte Lingling. Orgrim frowned slightly when he heard this. To say whether this dead old woman might choose to deal with him, in fact, there is still a possibility. Even though everyone is developing now, they are still fighting a war with a tacit understanding. But if there is a chance to kill the other party, she will definitely do it. However, Orgrim still thinks that the possibility of her is not very high. If it was really her, why would she start a war with us in the Devil's Triangle? Orgrim asked in a deep voice. This, Beckman hesitated for a moment. Yes, if people from the New World were taking action, there would be no reason to choose the battlefield in the first half of the Grand Route, right? Why spread suspicion? Cover your own traces, Beckman thought for a while and said. But soon, he shook his head and said probably not. This is a bit too silly. I was in a blind spot just now. From this point of view, the Navy and the world government are indeed more likely. Assuming that the mastermind behind the scenes is the world government or the Navy headquarters, what should we do now? Orgrim looked at everyone and asked. Listening to Orgrim's inquiry, everyone was silent and thinking about countermeasures. But no one questioned whether to save Anirudh. Because the Warhammer pirates have never the habit of giving up any companions. When Shiji was imprisoned in Imperial, they all dared to take risks to cause trouble. Now that Enel has been captured by Maria, should we just give him up? Then today, everyone chose to give up on Enero. If something happens to them another day, wouldn't they also be given up? So this gap cannot be opened. On the other hand, the Warhammer pirates have to save face when they have reached this stage. It was impossible for their cotters to be caught. They gave up without any idea at all. If they did this, what would the people on the sea think of them? After thinking for a while, Rengar said, since behind this, 10 if there are 8 or 9 cases where the world government and the Navy are causing trouble, then shouldn't we just choose to deal with them directly? After a short pause, Rengar continued, for example, we directly attack several participating countries and threaten the world government to release their people. If they don't let go, we will massacre the city and destroy the country. You can also catch the celestial dragons. Aren't the celestial dragons very noble? Let's exchange hostages for hostages. Capture the celestial dragons and trade Enel with the world government. Stussy said excitedly. Orgrim's eyes lit up. Okay, you evil bastards. But at this moment, Beckman shook his head and said these seem very feasible, but in reality before the Navy or the world government really comes to the stage from behind the scenes, these ideas and countermeasures of ours are a bit embarrassing. What's the meaning? Orgrim frowned and asked, does he think this method is pretty good? Assuming that the Navy is really behind the scenes this time, then they did not choose to do it themselves, but chose to use Moria, the king's Shishibukai, to do it, just to guard against us, Beckman said in a deep voice. Is this considered a precaution? Rengar murmured in confusion, not wanting to understand the connection. Yes, there is a lot of room for leeway in the identity of the Oshikibukai. Although they are an organization under the world government, in fact, they are still pirates, and they are not completely controlled by the world government. This is the excuse prepared by the world government, Beckman said. What excuse? Orgrim also asked. If we threaten the world government and the Navy, like we did just now, to massacre some of the affiliated countries, and the world government backfires and says that Moria acted on his own, and can even expel Moria from the king's Shishibukai, then we don't care what? Beckman asked. Does it matter? Although there is no evidence, we pirates still need evidence for what we do? Orgrim asked in surprise. This involves an issue of pressure. It is true that we do not need evidence, but the franchise countries under the world government do. If the world government insists that this matter was done by Moria himself, even if we slaughtered several franchisees' countries, the world government will not be under a lot of pressure, because the other franchise countries have no legitimate reasons to put pressure on them. How many franchise countries do you think the world government will care about the destruction of? Especially these new world franchise countries? Beckman looked at Orgrim and asked. Before Orgrim could speak, Beckman looked at Plank again and asked Plank, this year, Apply to join a non-joining country in the world government order. How many are there? Planck was stunned for a moment, then quickly said 24. There are countless countries in the world, and the world government always controls the number of franchised countries under their control between 170 and 200. Every year, many franchised countries are revoked for various reasons, such as they can't afford to pay heavenly gold or anything. There are also many countries, under pressure from pirates and neighboring countries, choosing to apply to join the world government. If Orgrim and the others really choose to massacre the participating countries, the best target is the franchise countries in the New World. And many of the franchise countries in the New World are now declining because of the influence of the world government here, and they choose to waver between pirates and the world government. World government, do they really care about Orgrim and the others massacring several such countries? This is when there is no evidence, but once there is evidence, it will be different. Once there is evidence that the Navy and the world government are involved, if we continue to slaughter the affiliated countries to threaten the world government, they will withstanding the huge pressure from the other franchise countries. This is the key point that can force them to release people, because the world government may not care about the life and death of a few franchise countries. After all, we cannot kill all the franchise countries. But those franchise countries will inevitably feel the same way, and they are even less sure whether our next target will be them, so they will definitely put pressure on the world government to let them choose, Beckman said. Orgrim was still frowning, thinking about what Beckman said. Does it seem to make sense? Beckman glanced at everyone, and then said, if you look at it from these perspectives, this matter is no longer a conspiracy, but a conspiracy. As long as we can't find concrete evidence that the Navy and the world government are involved, this matter will most likely be a dead end in the end. How many of us will be slaughtered? A franchise country, and the world government found that we could not fall into this trap, so in a rage, it killed Eniru directly. In the end, both sides suffered heavy losses. This time, after Beckman's words fell, everyone's expressions became more serious. The previous massacres of the participating countries didn't matter, and it seemed that everyone didn't care much about this evidence. But if it involves the life and death of Enel problem, then we cannot ignore it. What about the dragon people? The celestial dragons can always do that, right? They are not a franchise country. If we slaughter a few franchise countries, the world government may not care, but if they capture a few Draco people, they will definitely care, right? This is not a resource they can replenish at any time. The Sphinx looked at Beckman and asked. There are many countries that want to join the world government, but not just anyone can become a Tianlong. If we capture the celestial dragons and let the celestial dragon class put pressure on the world government, this will be much more effective than massacring allied countries, right? Rengar also asked with great anticipation. Beckman nodded, and then said, that's true. If the Tianlong people are used as a breakthrough point, the feasibility of this matter is far higher than massacring the participating countries, but there is also involving two issues. What is the problem? Orgrim asked quickly. The first one is how to capture the Tianlong people. Let's not mention this for now. The second one is the attitude of the 5 old stars. Beckman said. Before anyone could ask anything, Beckman explained directly, it depends on how determined Wulaoxing is. If Wulaoxing doesn't have any special attitude behind this plan, it belongs to that kind of if we neither support nor oppose it, then if we do this, the world government will most likely choose to release him because of the pressure from the celestial dragons. But if the 5 old stars support this plan, then it depends on how much they can endure and whether they are willing to sacrifice the lives of several Tianlong people to achieve this plan, Beckman said. Aren't they celestial dragons? Will do this? Rengar asked in disbelief. It is precisely because they are celestial dragons, and the highest ranking celestial dragons, that they have the power to order other celestial dragons, so they can withstand the pressure from the celestial dragons. Moreover, don't underestimate the 5 old stars. the celestial dragons are also divided into levels. Yes, it's obvious that the 5 old stars are not those celestial dragons who are just waiting to die. Do you think they really care about the lives of a few useless celestial dragons who only consume the resources of the world government? Especially when there are enough benefits, Beckman explained. The 5 old stars are obviously different from the ordinary coquettish celestial dragons. Their starting point is to make the world government long-term and stable, so that they can better rule the world. And the rest of the celestial dragons are almost the world government. There are moths, and they are big moths. It is impossible for the 5 old stars not to see this factor, but because everyone has the same blood and there are no good opportunities, they can only let these moths lie down. Suck blood from the world government, and suck it very much. But if there is a decent excuse, will the 5 old stars take the opportunity to kill people with a knife, and use the hands of Orgrim and others to clean up some of the worms and Dracos? What? It doesn't seem impossible. Orgrim has understood a little better at this time. After wandering around for a long time, he still has to come back to the evidence matter. If the attitude of the 5 old stars supports this matter, then it is difficult for ordinary Tianlong people to put pressure on Wu Laoxing without a suitable reason. Wu Laoxing can completely say that this is Moria's own fault. We are solving it as soon as possible and strive to save a few Tianlong people from dying. Just hit Tai Chi and that's it. And if there is evidence, Wu Laoxing can't resist the pressure like this. Otherwise, no matter how stupid the Tianlong people are, they can still see that Wu Laoxing is borrowing a knife to kill, then they must be crazy. Just like Beckman said, if the Navy and the world government are really behind this, then the current situation can be said to be a conspiracy, not a conspiracy. As long as you can't seize the evidence, we, the world government, can treat it as powerless and wrong. Leah opened his mouth, and even kicked him out of the King's 7 martial arts sea at a critical moment. In the process, we can accept it if you slaughter a few participating countries. The same is true if you kill a few Tianlong people. As for the issue of face, here is that the world government loves face, but it also depends on the timing. If the benefits are big enough, such as being able to severely damage or destroy the Warhammer pirates, then they must be shameless. Think about Dover brother Lang Ming can repeatedly jump in and out of the camp of King Shichibukai, and you can see the pattern of the world government making choices at critical moments. If they really wanted to save face and suffer, they would have been killed long ago. The rule of the people has been submissive. Therefore, this matter has returned to a dead end. Without evidence, it is very likely that everyone will die in the end. If Orgrim and others are lucky and can catch a few Dracos, maybe it looks a little better, but if you are unlucky, you will have to massacre a few franchise countries to vent your anger. The world in the other side of the mansion, when Orgrim finally failed to catch the trap, he killed Enelu to take revenge. This is just a guess and possibility on your part, Orgrim whispered softly. But at this point, he stopped talking. Yes, to put it bluntly, what Beckman just said is just a possibility, not a strict fact. It is not even impossible to overturn this assumption. But the question is, are Orgrim and the others willing to bet on this possibility? Put Enelu's life on the line? In this matter, the first priority is to rescue Enelu, instead of retaliating against the world government. Otherwise, wouldn't it be putting the cart before the horse?